Takuma Shinozaki is a new graduate working at his new job in product development. As part of the A-team for his company, he works alongside his senior Shiori Katase, who has been at the company for 3 years already. Shiori helps to guide him at the workplace, even though she is very small. One day on the way to work, Takuma sees Shiori playing with a cat on the side of the road. After ranting about the cat, they head into work together where Shiori notifies their manager Chihiro Akana she has prepared their team for an upcoming project competition. Although Shiori is small, she is the most responsible and motherly in the team. When Shiori complains about some shoulder aches, Takuma accidentally suggests a massage for her stiff shoulders but immediately regrets it after his imagination goes wild. Shiori turns the tables by offering him a massage instead, and she somehow successfully gives a good massage even though her hands are small. During the massage, Takuma quickly becomes embarrassed and decides to retreat. Later at work, he is worrying over his first major proposal for the company. While he practices his presentation, Shiori suddenly surprises him. She gives him advice since she also had a presentation when she first started working, and tells him to relax because during her presentation she had her PowerPoint upside down. Takuma is still nervous because he thinks his public speaking skills are poor, so Shiori offers him a good luck charm by holding her hand close to his face. But their close proximity accidentally embarrasses the both of them. Later, Takuma is taking a role for the end of the month drinking party. He confirms Aiko Yamajishi's attendance, who is another new graduate in Team B, but his invite gets rejected bluntly by Chinatsu Hayakawa, another new graduate. Aiko wonders if they are dating since they seem close, but both he and Chinatsu flatly denies it. Later, Shiori asks about his close behavior with Chinatsu, and Takuma reveals that he and Chinatsu actually grew up together as childhood friends. Takuma is shocked when Shiori admits to feeling jealous over this, and Takuma wonders if she might have feelings for him. But it turns out that Shiori is jealous that he is friends with the cool Chinatsu. To help them become friends, he decides to invite all of them to eat after work. The next time at work, Takuma sees Shiori calmly correcting another coworker's work, and he is surprised that she isn't angry that her coworkers have been slacking. Shiori thinks that as long as people admit to their mistakes she won't become angry, but she also asks if he has been working well as well. Takuma is taken aback when Shiori climbs nearby stairs to pat his head, and she encourages him to work hard for the team. Later, Takuma is taking her words to heart and is working late. Shiori approaches with 2 drinks since she bought 2 on accident, and she wonders why he seems to be staying late. After Takuma explains his workload, Shiori volunteers her help since a senior should always look out for their junior. They finish late in the day and decide to have dinner together, and when Shiori sneezes, Takuma gives her his sweater to her embarrassment. Walking to the restaurant, the sweater makes Shiori feel too self-conscious, so she gives it back. She also doesn't want their coworkers to get any ideas. At the restaurant, Takuma watches as Shiori takes a long time to order since she loves all the choices. She finally settles on pudding, which she really loves, and Takuma thanks her for helping him adapt to his new job. He reveals that he successfully had his presentation that day and it was thanks to her it was successful. Shiori is happy but reminds him that he shouldn't work too hard or too late. As they eat dinner together, the next morning, Takuma sees Shiori again playing with a cat, but she gets confused when Takuma makes cat sounds as well to make fun of her. Meanwhile, their other coworkers enjoy watching the two of them interact. Later at work, Shiori gets a gift of cookies from another employee to give to her team. She spots Takuma relaxing in the break room and confronts him looking serious. After asking him if he likes bears or bunnies better, a question that greatly confuses him, she reveals and gives him a bear cookie. The next day, Shiori arrives at work early before everyone else. She accidentally loses her pen under Takuma's desk, who doesn't notice her when he arrives at work. They get into an embarrassing situation together when Shiori accidentally hits her head on the desk. Meanwhile, their manager Chihiro and coworker Aiko arrive looking unimpressed. Later, Takuma sends some documents to Shiori, who is pleased at the quality of his work, so she pats his head. Chihiro watches them interact and doesn't think they act like coworkers very much. He wonders if they have another relationship instead, so he decides to send them to a restaurant so he can spy on them. After they both leave after work, Chihiro follows them since he is trying to see if they are secretly a couple. But while spying, he gets caught by Chinatsu, who also sees Takuma and Shiori heading into a restaurant together. Chihiro's imagination runs wild, and he becomes worried that he has stumbled into a love triangle, but Chinatsu insists she has absolutely no feelings towards Takuma. Instead, she gets roped into spying with Chihiro. At the restaurant, Takuma and Shiori are impressed with the fancy setting and view, but Chihiro sees that they seem to be ignoring the romantic setting. Chinatsu wonders what is going on, and Chihiro reveals he is a great lover of other people's romance, which she thinks is very weird. Meanwhile, Takuma and Shiori are enjoying the view from their seats, but Takuma gets embarrassed when he realizes that they are sitting close to each other. Chihiro happily watches the situation as the coworkers have dinner and decide to walk home together. The next day, Chinatsu spots Takuma heading to work and joins him. She asks about the umbrella he is holding, and he reveals that he heard on the TV that the lucky item of the day is an umbrella, so he brought one. As it turns out, it rains after work, and thankfully he brought an umbrella. He spots Shiori waiting out the rain and offers to walk with her, and they end up sharing an umbrella together. Takuma is too nervous to talk, and he tries to keep the umbrella over her even though his shoulder gets wet. Although his small talk is bad, Shiori is able to save the conversation by talking about their coworkers and encouraging him to get closer to the rest of his team. She also tells him the section chief has his eye on him, since he heard good things about Takuma's work. Shiori parts ways with him to go to a bookstore, but reveals in the process she had an umbrella the whole time. A day later, Shiori notices that Takuma is missing, and Chihiro reveals that her junior called in sick that morning. Shiori wonders if the rain got him sick, so she gets worried for him. While Takuma is recovering, he suddenly gets a visit from Shiori, who is checking up on him. She also brought him some supplies and offers to make him food while he recovers. She ends up doing more chores around his apartment, and reveals that she considers herself a big sister. She later leaves a little embarrassed after spending a lot of time with Takuma. Soon Takuma is feeling better, and he goes to meet Chinatsu to get advice on a gift for Shiori. They debate the traditions of workplace gifts, and Chinatsu suggests he give her something food related. After they decide on an apron, Takuma prepares to give the thank you gift to her, but almost stops himself out of embarrassment. He encourages himself and ends up giving the gift anyway, and while Shiori is grateful, it leads to an awkward situation between the two of them. Meanwhile, Chihiro watches them happily. Later at work, Yuisuke Yamagishi from the public relations department arrives looking for Chihiro. Yuisuke complains to Takuma since it is Tuesday, and the week has only started, but Chinatsu interrupts them and tells them to get over it and start working. Meanwhile, Shiori and Takuma say hi to each other, and Takuma feels like the workweek might not be so bad. Later, Chihiro asks Takuma if they can speak alone to see if Takuma is adapting well to the workplace. Chihiro reveals that Shiori was tracking his interviews and application process with some excitement, since she enjoys meeting new people. Shiori overhears them because she is eating nearby, and they invite her to join them. They talk about Takuma's first day at work, where he first was introduced to Shiori. Takuma was shocked by Shiori's small size, but became intimidated by her mentorship when she started to teach him the work. At first, Takuma thought he had made a terrible first impression on Shiori, and he gets nervous asking her for help. But she was just looking serious to try to impress him, and was actually very helpful on his first day. Shiori also appreciated being called senior, since she had never mentored anyone at the workplace before. The both of them ended up quickly becoming friends, but their first meeting still makes them embarrassed. A few days later, Takuma is assigned a presentation to another company, and Shiori helps him. On their way back, Shiori sees cute plushies inside a crane game, and they accidentally admit that the plushies look like each other. Shiori is amused that Takuma finds her similar to a bunny plushie, and she finds Takuma similar to a bear plushie. Takuma offers to try to win the plushies for them since he used to play a lot of arcade games in high school. They bond over a mutual fondness of cute things together, although Takuma is embarrassed to admit that he likes cute things. Shiori watches Takuma play the crane game, and Takuma becomes amused by her reactions while he is making his attempts. Eventually, they are able to win the plushies together, and Shiori wants to keep them together so they won't be lonely, which inflames Takuma's imagination. Shiori decides to name the plushies Shiori and Takuma after themselves. Later at work, Aiko asks Takuma and Chinatsu for their opinion on a new Meowtaro game that she will be designing for. She reveals it will be a dating game, which confuses them. Takuma is uncertain about making a dating game from a cute mascot, and his fears are confirmed when an arriving Shiori, who is a fan of Meowtaro, is confused by the dating game. Aiko really wants to make the game, so she asks them for romantic advice, but unfortunately none of them have any romantic experience. Takuma points out that Chinatsu did have a romantic encounter when a guy helped her with a broken shoe on her way to an interview, but it turns out the guy was her interviewer and future manager Chihiro. Chinatsu also doesn't find Chihiro very attractive anymore because of his weird behaviors. Later that night, Shiori is staring at the plushies she won with Takuma, and she is starting to regret calling them Takuma and Shiori. She cheers herself up by adding clothes to the plushies and then gets self-conscious, so she makes the Takuma plushie face the wall. Later, she accidentally knocks the two plushies together, which makes her imagine a romantic encounter with Takuma. After she corrects their position, she thinks about her growing friendship with Takuma. New graduate Takuma works alongside his childhood friend Chinatsu, and is guided by his tiny senior Shiori, who has been responsible for mentoring him. One day, Chinatsu is attending a cosplay event after work when she runs into the team manager Chihiro. Even worse for her, Chinatsu is actually in cosplay when she runs into him. Chinatsu quickly panics and pretends to be someone else, but Chihiro easily recognizes her. She also becomes worried because she considers Chihiro kind of a normie. Chihiro starts to ask questions about her cosplay, revealing that she spent many hours making it herself. But instead of thinking her hobby is creepy, Chihiro compliments her abilities and tells her that he thinks her outfit looks very good. Chihiro doesn't have many hobbies himself, so he admires people who enjoy themselves with hobbies. Chinatsu becomes embarrassed when he compliments her outfit, but she also begs him to keep her cosplay habit a secret between themselves, since she doesn't want their coworkers to know about her possibly embarrassing habit. Chihiro agrees after embarrassing Chinatsu once more with more compliments. Later that night, Chinatsu is attempting to work on manga, but she can't concentrate because of the cosplay event. She worries about work the next day. And the next day, Chinatsu doesn't manage to finish her work on time due to her worry. Takuma and Shiori are worried for her, and Shiori encourages Chinatsu to get more sleep and to think about counting cats. Meanwhile, their manager Chihiro expresses his concern, but Chinatsu is still embarrassed around him. Chihiro suddenly asks if they can talk in private after work, which continues to shock her, and she accepts even though she gets some teasing from Shiori. After work, Chinatsu prepares to leave for a restaurant to meet Chihiro, but meets him after tripping on some stairs. She becomes surprised to hear that he remembered their first meeting when he interviewed her for the company. At the dinner, Chihiro asks if there is anything he could do to help her adapt to working life. Chinatsu starts to think that this might be a work dinner, but when Chihiro suddenly becomes serious, she wonders if he is going to confess to her. It turns out, however, that Chihiro was so inspired by her cosplay at the event that he wants to go to more events. He also asks for her help with taking photographs of cosplayers. An embarrassed Chinatsu decides to agree, as long as he helps her make her cosplays. The next day, Chinatsu asks Takuma to lunch. Meanwhile, Shiori starts to tease Chihiro, who notices that the two of them are close. But her teasing actually activates Chihiro's romantic delusions, as he starts to think of love triangles between all his coworkers. And he doesn't understand when Shiori tries to correct him, and continues to keep thinking about his coworkers in various couplings. At lunch, Chinatsu is trying to get advice from Takuma since she accidentally revealed her otaku habits to Chihiro. Takuma still doesn't know about her cosplay habit, and Chinatsu wonders if she should embrace her hobby in front of her coworkers. Suddenly, Chihiro and Shiori show up asking if they could join for lunch. But Chinatsu becomes embarrassed when she realizes Chihiro overheard her conversation with Takuma. The next day, Shiori is preparing the office for Halloween by putting up decorations. Takuma becomes shocked when he sees his mentor in a costume, and then gets forced into role-playing Halloween with her. Meanwhile, Chihiro wishes Chinatsu a happy Halloween by giving her cat ears to wear. Meanwhile, Takuma and Shiori are trying out different candies for Halloween, until Shiori remembers that they shouldn't eat too much or they'll become fat. They get into an uncomfortable situation for Takuma when Shiori asks him to help her try some candy. But when he takes too long, she takes the candy and eats it herself. Unfortunately for Shiori, she accidentally eats some candy laced with alcohol and somehow becomes drunk. Chihiro and Chinatsu appear, and Shiori immediately becomes affectionate with Chinatsu. Shiori also mistakes Chihiro for a tree, before she goes on a minor rant thanking him for their good work environment. When a drunk Shiori sees Takuma, she immediately starts crying in happiness because of how well he has adapted to the work environment, and how capable he has become. Takuma quickly becomes embarrassed by her attention, and his coworker takes pictures. Meanwhile, Chihiro tries to ask Shiori what she thinks of Takuma, but even while drunk, she doesn't give a clear answer. Months later, Shiori is happy that it is December, and that means it will be the Christmas season too. She asks Takuma if he has any Christmas plans, and teases him when he doesn't have any plans, saying that she could maybe come to work dressed as Santa. Later, Takuma and Shiori have a quiet meeting together. After the meeting, they pass by stores where Shiori spots cute loungewear on display. Takuma imagines Shiori in the loungewear, and Shiori also points out loungewear that looks close to the stuffed animals they had won together, but she quickly becomes embarrassed thinking of the two of them in the pajamas. Suddenly, a woman calling herself the Nayatuber arrives to interview them, claiming that she is interviewing couples downtown. But Nayatuber becomes devastated to hear that Takuma and Shiori are just co-workers and are not dating themselves. The reporter begs them to become a couple just for the interview, since they haven't been able to find any couples on the internet. Surprisingly, Shiori agrees to help the interviewers and pretend that the two of them are a couple. When the interview starts, she gives a surprisingly detailed answer about Takuma, since she knows a lot about him. But when the reporter starts to ask about their love lives, Shiori quickly becomes too embarrassed to answer. She makes up a story about the two of them kissing in the office break room, and although her answer shocks Takuma, he decides to do his best to act as well. Unfortunately, Takuma takes acting way too far and almost transforms into a different person as he starts hugging Shiori. He even makes up further stories for their fake dating life, including staying over at each other's apartments. But when she feels him shaking, Shiori quickly realizes that Takuma is putting on a confident exterior, but he is also extremely nervous. Suddenly, the reporter asks if they can end with a kiss, so Shiori pulls in Takuma and pretends to kiss him on camera, ending the interview. Later that night, Chinatsu becomes shocked when she sees the interview of Takuma and Shiori online. And the next morning, everyone at the office had seen it too. As the holiday season gets closer, the whole company celebrates with a night out. After celebrating, Takuma and Shiori walk together after the party where they talk about Chihiro's Santa costume. Secretly, Takuma thinks of Shiori in her own costume, and the two of them decide to explore the city's holiday decorations before heading home. At the town Christmas tree, the two of them admit they really appreciate spending the holiday with each other, even though they become embarrassed about the romantic implications. The couple also exchange Christmas stories with each other, such as the different presents they got during Christmas as children. Meanwhile, when Shiori starts to become cold, Takuma attempts to use the opportunity to offer her gloves, but she already has some. She mistakes his intentions and tries to give him her gloves, but they also don't fit. Before they head home, Shiori reveals she ended up buying the pajamas they saw together, and she gives him the brown pajamas as a gift. Takuma had also bought her the pink pajamas, and they exchanged gifts underneath the town tree. Bravely, Shiori suggests they show off the pajamas to each other, but the moment becomes ruined when it turns out Chihiro and Chinatsu were spying on them. After some gentle teasing between the coworkers, they all decide to exchange contact information with each other, and as it starts to snow, Shiori suggests they all work on a snowman together. Later that night, Shiori tries on the new pajamas, feeling a little self-conscious, and she starts talking to the Takuma plushie for support. That night, Takuma has a dream of Shiori wearing a Santa outfit delivering presents. He also dreams that he is a reindeer helping her with Christmas duties. Takuma soon wakes up embarrassed because he is dreaming of his coworker. Meanwhile, Chinatsu and Chihiro are at a comic convention together to sell Chinatsu's manuscripts. Days earlier, an overworked Chinatsu had complained that she had no friends to help her at the comic event, when Chihiro overhears and decides to volunteer. She discovers that Chihiro actually has great design skills, and after work the two of them help review her manga scripts. But even though Chihiro is a great assistant, Chinatsu becomes embarrassed showing more of her hobbies to her manager. On the day of the comic convention, Chinatsu becomes even more embarrassed when her friends keep thinking Chihiro is her boyfriend, since Chihiro keeps calling Chinatsu his gal. Meanwhile, Shiori is still thinking about Christmas when she decides to call Takuma to congratulate him for doing so well at work for his first year on the job. They tease each other about their junior and senior relationship at work, and end up earnestly expressing their appreciation for each other. After the call, Takuma's older sister Yudaka suddenly confronts Takuma. She asks him if he has started dating, because there is no way he would buy cute pajamas on his own. She quickly deduces that he might be interested in someone at work, even though Takuma quickly denies this. To make matters worse, Takuma quickly has another dream about Shiori. This time, Shiori is a stray cat in a box that Takuma finds on the road. When Takuma interacts with cat Shiori, who has a sign saying "Please adopt me," he becomes increasingly embarrassed and suffers a heart attack from her cat-like behavior. At the same time, Shiori herself dreams about being a stray cat on the road. And although she is dreaming about her junior at work, Shiori can't help herself and pretends to be a stray cat so that he can pet her head. She has fun pretending to be a cat, but wakes up the next morning disturbed by the crazy dream. Later, Yudaka has become increasingly suspicious of Takuma's happy behavior. She is certain that he has started dating someone, so she decides to prove it by giving him a complicated psychological test. Using the test, Yudaka quickly determines from Takuma's reaction to a cute cat that her brother is interested in someone who acts cute and cat-like. Afterwards, when Takuma leaves to see a shrine with Shiori on New Year's, Yudaka decides to follow and spy on him. Unfortunately, because of the weird dreams they've had, Shiori and Takuma act awkwardly around each other. Meanwhile, Chinatsu and Chihiro arrive as well. The spying Yudaka is taken aback by how cute Shiori is, and she quickly comes out of hiding to hug Shiori, and Takuma introduces her as his obsessive sister. While Yudaka fawns over Shiori, Chihiro suddenly introduces himself as Takuma's boss, and sensing an opportunity, he suggests that Yudaka would gain a little sister if Shiori and Takuma got married. Struck by this, Yudaka quickly demands that her little brother get married, embarrassing him and Shiori as he orders her to go home. Chinatsu and Takuma scold them for their behavior, and Takuma apologizes to Shiori for his sister's pushy behavior. Unfortunately, Yudaka and Chihiro continue to tease them throughout the shrine visit. Newly graduated Takuma is mentored by his coworker Shiori, even though Shiori is almost half his height. To celebrate the new year, they decide to go to the New Year's festival together, and they are joined by Takuma's childhood friend and coworker Chinatsu, their manager Chihiro, and Takuma's sister Yudaka. An excited Shiori wants to check out the different festival stalls, but she becomes embarrassed when she takes Takuma's in excitement. The two of them encounter a crying kid who Shiori comforts, and promises to take care of while they search for the girl's parents. Meanwhile, Yudaka and Chihiro watch the proceedings, which looks like a cute new family to them. Eventually, they all return to work and Shiori is happy that they are all in the office again. Takuma expresses his disappointment that the holidays pass so quickly, but Shiori becomes distracted when she notices that Takuma might have grown taller over the holidays. After measuring her height against his, she confirms that he has definitely grown. Takuma tries to compliment Shiori on her smell, asking if she bought new shampoo, but the embarrassed Shiori isn't receptive to the compliment. She tries to tell him she bought new perfume recently, and she has also gotten a bit larger, but this leads into a misunderstanding when Takuma thinks that other parts of Shiori have gotten larger. Eventually, they confirm that Shiori's new boots are actually making her look taller. Later, their coworker Ishimaya from public relations tries to extract a favor out of Takuma by using a cute face, but he gets scolded by Shiori, who overhears the exchange. Shiori is in charge of assigning Takuma work, so she doesn't appreciate him taking her subordinate. Ishimaya still doesn't give up, however, and he sends secret emails to Takuma. Meanwhile, Chinatsu is working late and becomes shocked when Chihiro appears out of nowhere in front of her. Her manager wonders why she is staying so late, and Chinatsu reveals she is working on a favor for Ishimaya, who begged her with a cute face to finish his work at the end of the day. Chihiro jokes that Ishimaya is taking advantage of her and that he will have a word with their coworker to make sure it doesn't happen again. Chinatsu thanks him, and she tears up a little since he is looking out for her. Chihiro gets her some tea and promises to keep her company until she finishes the work, and afterwards he takes her to a fancy restaurant as a reward for working late. After they enjoy a meal together, Chinatsu asks about his romantic history, but the manager reveals that although he has a lot of ideals about romance, and he loves the topic of romance, he himself has never had a romantic partner, and is more or less interested in other people's romance. Suddenly, Yudaka appears from the neighboring table. She reveals that she had run away from her coworkers to go eat alone, but feels a little bad eating by herself. She invites herself over to get pictures of Shiori from Chihiro, but Chinatsu finds herself feeling a little envious of Yudaka. Yudaka misunderstands the situation and moves to sit close to Chinatsu, and the misunderstandings get worse when Chihiro and Yudaka each try to pair each other up with Chinatsu. The next morning, Takuma is awakened by Yudaka on top of him. She demands he get pictures of Shiori for her because she could be a future sister-in-law and has very fluffy hair. She also reveals that she is now friends with his boss and will blackmail him if he doesn't give in to her demands. Though when Takuma tries to send pictures to Yudaka, his sister takes his phone and instead sends a questionable text asking Shiori for cute pictures. Shiori is terribly embarrassed by the request, but Takuma is able to get his phone back to let her know about the misunderstanding. Instead, Shiori decides to send a cute picture anyway, even though she feels like they should be dating if they want to exchange pictures. Later, Yudaka starts to feel bad about things, so she decides to send pictures of Takuma to Shiori, including his baby photos. The next morning, Takuma is heading to work and is a little anxious about meeting Shiori due to the previous night's shenanigans. But Takuma ends up overthinking things because Shiori is more entertained and less embarrassed by the events. They end up getting ambushed by their manager hiding in the bushes, and he helps take a picture of them together. After the picture, Shiori admits that she was a little nervous to take the picture, but her extroverted personality ends up grabbing other people in the office for a group picture together. Yudaka gets the picture at her workplace, and she complains about being left out. Later, Chinatsu is complaining about being overworked and looking up different vacations online. Takuma brings up that they just came back from New Year's vacation, but both she and Shiori start to imagine different holiday vacations they could be having instead of working. They come up with an idea to go on vacation together, but Takuma is uncertain about joining them. However, Chihiro persuades them to all go on vacation since they're in a slow period of work. Since Takuma doesn't want to be the only guy on the trip, he asks the manager to join as well. Chihiro becomes more excited about the idea when he thinks about all the spying he can do on his coworkers. A few days later, they all get ready to go on the trip together. When they arrive on vacation, Takuma becomes worried when he hears Shiori scream, but he finds out his short mentor was just crying in happiness from all the cats she sees. Unfortunately, the cats all seem scared of her and she isn't able to successfully pet them. Meanwhile, Chinatsu is covered in cats. The group later goes swimming together, but Takuma becomes internally anxious when he sees Shiori in a swimsuit, and she ends up self-conscious. Chinatsu asks them all to join her in the river, but Shiori keeps gently telling them all to go on ahead without her. And Takuma figures out that Shiori actually has no idea how to swim. She reveals that she suffered an accident in her childhood that made her scared to swim. Takuma comforts her and eventually she decides to join him, but she keeps getting too nervous when she becomes fully submerged in the water. Takuma tries to teach her, but he ends up getting a cramp and almost drowning, and Shiori is able to get over her fear to help him. Afterwards, she and Chinatsu go to the hot springs together, and they talk about how they've enjoyed the trip so far, although Shiori feels embarrassed about her lack of swimming skill. The group later eat dinner together where Shiori has too many drinks and becomes affectionate. Takuma is both shocked and embarrassed by her forward behavior, while Chinatsu and Chihiro watch them amused. Takuma decides to try to take care of his mentor, but panics when his two coworkers take this chance to disappear. Things take an embarrassing turn when Shiori offers to brush his teeth, and the two of them turn off the lights to share a futon together. Soon Takuma hears their coworkers returning, and since he doesn't want to get caught in a compromising position, he decides to hide the two of them in a closet nearby. He gets worried when he accidentally sneezes, and Shiori ends up waking up from her daze to hug him tightly. Chinatsu becomes suspicious of the closet, but luckily, Chihiro starts talking about a ghost story he heard about the tavern. Since the blonde-haired girl is deathly scared of ghosts, she decides not to open the closet, but Shiori overhears her and tries to escape the closet. So Takuma puts a cloth sheet on Shiori so that she ends up scaring their coworkers away. Afterwards, Shiori has fallen asleep, so he puts his mentor to bed. But unfortunately for him, this is the exact moment his coworkers come back. Unfortunately, when they all go back to work, Takuma and Shiori get stuck in another hiding situation when they try to avoid some kissing coworkers in a storeroom. The situation started when Chihiro asked them to go find supplies for the company mascot Meowtero's 30th anniversary. But while they are searching the storeroom together, they end up running into two fellow coworkers who are using the storeroom as a place to meet romantically. An embarrassed Shiori and Takuma try to escape the situation, but quickly become cornered by their coworkers. They end up hiding in a small storage locker instead. Unfortunately, their coworkers take a long time with each other, keeping the two of them trapped for a long time. The close quarters increasingly make them embarrassed, so Takuma comes up with a plan to lure them away. Unfortunately, he left his phone on his desk and Shiori's phone is in her back pocket. After he retrieves the phone, Takuma calls for an emergency for their coworkers, which gives them the opportunity to escape. They promise not to talk about what happened, but Chihiro immediately becomes suspicious, and both of them are unable to sleep that night. The next morning, Chihiro notices they are acting awkwardly with each other and determines something happened between his subordinates. Later, he reports this to Yudaka, who ambushes her younger brother again. Yudaka tells him that she can smell his small mentor's scent on his soup and determines they must have been stuck in a locker together. Takuma quickly retreats to work, but is unable to do well because of his anxiety. Meanwhile, Shiori tries to act normal by putting on a brave face, but she too is embarrassed. Takuma then asks her to dinner after work so they can clear up the misunderstanding, but Shiori becomes increasingly worried during the day because she thinks that Takuma might be confessing to her. After she imagines the scenario, she gets told that her coworkers who were hooking up were reassigned away from each other because office romances are forbidden at their company. Shiori worries about a similar situation with her and Takuma, and she starts to imagine how they would look if the two of them were a couple. But the office gossip becomes interrupted when their amorous coworkers arrive, and Shiori can tell they are way too obvious with their office romance. That night, Shiori heads to the meeting place on the roof to meet Takuma. She tries to pass off their meeting casually, and her happy greetings end up stopping Takuma from talking about the romantic undertones of their relationship, and he changes the subject instead. New hire Takuma is attending his company's 40th anniversary with his mentor Shiori, and his coworker Chinatsu, and his manager Chihiro. During the presentation, the CEO of the company announces a new hire competition for all the people in the company, and Shiori tells Takuma in the past, their manager Chihiro won the MVP award when he was new. The competition is to promote the company mascot Meowtero, and the reward is a free beach vacation for their whole team. Takuma wants to win the vacation to spend time with Shiori, so the rest of his coworkers decide to help him with his work so he can focus on winning the competition. Later, Takuma talks about the competition with his fellow new hire Yuisuke, who isn't interested in winning the resort because he doesn't like his team very much. Yuisuke dreams about transferring to Takuma's team so he could work with Shiori and Chihiro, and he teases Takuma about his close relationship with Shiori. This makes Takuma think about all the events that have happened between him and Shiori, including his aborted confession attempt. Meanwhile, they are approached by Akari, a rising star of Group 1 who is considered the favorite to win the competition. Akari is completely focused on work, but overheard them talking about Shiori. She misunderstands Takuma's closeness with Shiori, and starts to suspect the older girl is abusing her power as a mentor. But when the boys defend Shiori, she starts to argue with Yuisuke. Luckily, her manager Shinobu arrives, who is able to calm down Akari, who completely worships her manager. Shinobu joined the company at the same time as Chihiro, and they are friendly rivals as a result, especially because Chihiro won the award when they started the company, and his group usually outperforms hers. But over time, Shinobu and Chihiro have built a working relationship based on respect, and she doesn't hold ill feelings toward him, and she actually wants him to work with her. She tells Takuma that she has an agreement with the CEO that if her group wins the competition, Chihiro would be transferred to her team. Takuma doesn't want to lose his manager and tells them they won't win, but Akari is determined to be the MVP this year. As they leave, Ishimaya from PR reveals himself to have been eavesdropping the entire time. A worried Takuma returns to his group to find Shiori and Chihiro having tea together, unaware of the crisis. As part of the promotional event, the entire team goes to a nearby school to promote Meowtaro in a product test. They play and interact with the kids at the school with Meowtaro merchandise, but Takuma is still worried about the competition, especially since he hasn't told the group what Shinobu told him. While they interact with the kids, Takuma and Shiori watch each other interact with kids, and impress each other on how well they each interact with children. They are even able to work together to solve kids fighting over a toy, but this leads to a young girl wanting to use them to pretend to play house. Shiori starts to fantasize about a family with Takuma, but the girl actually wanted Shiori to play the role of the house cat. Shiori goes along with the girl's request, but ends up embarrassing herself by acting like a cat in front of her coworkers. This also leads to a close moment between her and Takuma. Later they help the girl create a sand castle which ends up being destroyed by another kid, but the two of them are able to resolve the situation and get the kids to play nice with each other. The team leaves the school successfully, although Chinatsu slowly stressed from their visit. Meanwhile, on the car ride back, Shiori starts to think more romantically about Takuma. The next day, Takuma finds Shiori working overtime in the office eating cup ramen when he accidentally runs into her singing. An embarrassed Shiori ends up dealing with the shock by getting him to sing about their company mascot. Meanwhile, Yuisuke and Akari meet each other in the break room and he encourages her not to push herself too hard. She ignores him, and the toll of the competition is affecting Takuma as well as he appears the next day completely exhausted. Takuma feels the pressure of winning the competition because he doesn't want to disappoint his coworkers and lose his manager. Shiori easily detects he is stressed, so she calms him down and tells him to just try his best. Meanwhile, Akari is meeting with her manager who is happy with her work, but she also feels the stress from the competition, but puts on a brave face. This leads to Takuma finding her crying outside the bathrooms. Feeling bad for her, Takuma asks Shiori later if she could somehow help Akari since she is always good at calming him down. Shiori agrees, and later that night she finds Akari working late in the break room. A competitive Akari doesn't want to listen to her, but Shiori is able to break through to Akari by talking about Meowtaro, which sends Akari into an excited rant because she loves the company mascot. Shiori asks Akari if she is stressed about the upcoming competition, and Akari eventually confesses that she is terrible at art. Somehow she was hired even though her skills were lacking, and she kept this a secret from everyone in the company. But she doesn't want to disappoint her manager Shinobu, so she keeps trying to practice in secret. Shiori tells her to tell Shinobu the truth, and everything will be okay. Akari decides to go to Shinobu with the truth, and shows off her terrible art, but she immediately starts crying saying that she is a failure. Shinobu recognizes she is pushing the girl too hard, and she comforts her and asks the rest of the team to give her support. Later, Takuma is preparing for the competition by dressing up in a Meowtaro costume. He gets compliments from the rest of the team, but Shiori is a bundle of nerves and is worried for him. Suddenly, Akari appears and tells him that she is his rival for the competition, but she also thanks him for asking Shiori to help cheer her up, even though she has no intention of losing to him. Their conversation leads to Shiori learning the truth about the competition, that Chihiro would be transferred if Takuma lost. Shiori is disappointed that Takuma didn't inform her, and is shocked that actually everyone else knew. But Takuma calms her down after apologizing, and tells her that with her guidance so far he will definitely win. The team heads out to the competition, where Chinatsu introduces a redesign of the mascot as a super friend, while Takuma appears dressed as a skateboarding Meowtaro. The presentation is appreciated by the audience who all think it's a good idea, but Shiori is still worried about the results backstage. After Takuma does a magic trick, he becomes quite popular, which makes Shiori somewhat jealous, but still happy that the presentation went well. Afterwards, Shiori ambushes the costumed Meowtaro to give him a hug, but Meowtaro panics and starts to run. Suddenly, Takuma appears behind her, and to Shiori's embarrassment, Takuma had to actually switch places with Chihiro, so her manager was actually in the costume. Later, the results of the competition are announced, and the CEO tells them that both Takuma's team and Akari's team both won awards for excellence. But this also means that neither team won the MVP award for their team. Takuma is sad to not win the beach vacation, although Shiori tells him it's okay, and Akari starts to cry for disappointing her manager, but Shinobu comforts her and tells her that she appreciates everything. Meanwhile, everyone is shocked when Yuisuke wins the MVP award due to his confusion. Afterwards, the whole company goes to a holiday party, and Shiori ambushes Takuma after taking him to eat ramen with her. After she compliments him for doing well on the competition, they become embarrassed when people passing by think they are a couple. After the holidays, they are all back at work, and Chinatsu is heading out to lunch when Chihiro decides to join her. Shiori teases Chinatsu that it's a lunch date, but the short also becomes teased when Takuma joins them. Meanwhile, Yusuke arrives back from his vacation quite tanned, but also traumatized by his other coworkers. Their coworker Eiko arrives to show off a new game from Maotaro she made inspired by the competition. For Eiko's game, the players have to romance a humanized Maotaro, but the group is confused about the different character choices Eiko made. Suddenly, Akari appears excited to hear about a new game about Maotaro, but she quickly becomes disillusioned by the fact that Eiko has turned her favorite mascot human. The two of them argue about whether or not fans will actually enjoy the game. Meanwhile, the romance choices in the game remind Takuma and Shiori of their own budding romance, and in particular the time where Takuma made an aborted confession to Shiori on the company roof. Eiko confuses them to be disappointed in her game, and she tells them not to give up, accidentally giving them motivation to pursue their feelings for each other. This leads to Shiori telling Takuma later that night that she wouldn't mind if they became closer friends instead of just co-workers, and they could meet each other outside of work. Takuma quickly agrees, and they excitedly come up with different things they do with each other after work. Meanwhile, a happy Chihiro is spying on them. A few days later, Takuma and Shiori are happy they are now friends and not just co-workers. But they find that almost nothing has changed with their situation, since they are still keeping their feelings for each other a secret. Later at lunch, they both think about when the best time to move forward in their relationship is but are uncertain. During the conversation, they each get inspired by the work conversation to visit the amusement park together, and they each start thinking about going to the amusement park on a date. Eiko starts to take their fantasies off track when she talks about vacations at a private fancy hotel, which starts to make Takuma and Shiori embarrassed about their fantasies. They still secretly want to go on a trip with each other though. Meanwhile, Akari expresses her disapproval of theme parks because she wants to make her own Maotaro theme park. But she is open to going with the rest of the group to an amusement park to do research. They all decide on a theme park trip together, but find that their work schedules are too busy. But after lunch, Takuma asks Shiori privately if she wanted to go to an amusement park with him. She quickly agrees, and the next day after they each struggle to decide on what to wear, they go on their first official date together, finishing with a photo of the two of them together at the park. And this is all for this video. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.